She had everything: wealth, success, and the kind of life most only dream of. Yet, she chose to walk away from it all, stepping into a world where money meant nothing and appearances meant everything. To protect her twins and search for something money could never buy, true love, she disguised herself as poor. But in this hidden life, one man saw more than she expected. A black waiter, overlooked by many, would soon uncover a truth that changed everything. The question is, was she ready for what he revealed? By all accounts, she lived the dream life. A millionaire mother with a thriving business empire, a beautiful home, and two bright-eyed twins who filled her days with laughter. From the outside, she had everything: security, comfort, and status. But behind the walls of luxury, loneliness lingered. Her children needed more than wealth could buy. They needed love, a father figure, and a sense of stability that no amount of money could provide. Years of heartbreak had taught her that people were often drawn to her fortune, not her soul. Every smile, every promise, every hand that reached out to hers, it all came with conditions. Tired of being seen as nothing more than a bank account, she decided to strip away the image that defined her. No designer clothes, no private cars, just an ordinary woman, dressed simply, living in a modest neighborhood where no one would guess her secret. For weeks, she blended in, walking her twins to a small public school, shopping at local markets, and dining in an unassuming cafe far from the glittering restaurants she once frequented. It was in that cafe where the story began to shift, a place where faces came and went, where conversations floated on the scent of fresh bread and coffee. And there, moving quietly between tables, was a man who seemed almost invisible to others. He was a black waiter, polite but reserved, carrying plates with practiced ease. To many, he was just part of the background, a figure easily overlooked. But to her, he carried an unspoken weight. There was a sharpness in his eyes, a resilience in his posture, that hinted at a life marked by struggle. She didn't know his story yet, but something about him felt different, undeniable. What she didn't realize was that their worlds were about to collide. And when they did, the truth would not only test her disguise, but expose a reality far deeper than her own hidden wealth. Her decision to live disguised as ordinary was meant to test love, but the experiment soon revealed something far more unsettling. The world she thought she understood was not the same world her children's black waiter lived in every single day. At first, she noticed small things. The way customers dismissed him, snapping fingers instead of speaking his name. The way tips were smaller at his tables, even when his service was flawless. She watched wealthy patrons smile at her, assuming she was just another struggling single mom, then turned their eyes cold when he approached. It was subtle at times, sharp at others, but always present. She had spent her whole life insulated from this kind of cruelty. Money had been her shield. She thought stripping away would reveal who truly valued her. Instead, it revealed the ugliness others couldn't hide from. One afternoon, as she sat with her twins over sandwiches, the tension sharpened into something undeniable. A group of men in business suits entered, loud and entitled. They barely glanced at her, but the moment the waiter approached, their smiles shifted into sneers. They muttered jokes under their breath, ugly words coated in laughter. She saw his jaw tighten, but his voice remained calm, polite, professional. He carried their insults the way he carried their plates, silently, without dropping a single one. Her children noticed too. Her daughter whispered, "Why are they being so mean to him, Mama?" She had no answer. Later that week, she saw it again, this time even crueler. A manager scolded him in front of customers, blaming him for an order mistake that wasn't his. She had seen the truth. The error came from the kitchen, but no one stepped in. No one defended him. He just nodded, endured, and went back to work as if swallowing the injustice was part of the job. And still, there was dignity in him, a quiet strength. She realized he was living a test every day that was far harsher than the one she had created for herself. The more she saw, the more she couldn't look away. Each slight, each act of discrimination, chipped at her disguise. She had thought her hidden wealth would make her invisible, but now she felt exposed in a way she hadn't expected. Forced to confront a truth she had ignored her entire life. The breaking point came one stormy evening. She and her twins ducked into the cafe, rain dripping from their clothes. The place was nearly empty, save for a few customers scattered at tables. The waiter moved quickly, balancing trays, but she noticed a man at the counter watching him closely. Their voices grew louder, laced with the kind of taunts that carried an edge of danger. One of them shoved his chair back, blocking the waiter's path. "Watch where you're going," he sneered, though the waiter had done nothing wrong. The room stiffened. She could feel her children's small hands tighten in hers. For the first time, the waiter's calm cracked. His eyes flared, his voice low but steady. "Please let me pass." The man smirked, refusing to move. It was a silent standoff, one that pressed down on everyone in the cafe. And then, just as quickly, the waiter stepped aside, choosing restraint over confrontation. But she saw it. The humiliation, the weight of a choice no one should have to make just to stay safe. That night, she couldn't sleep. She replayed the moment over and over, haunted by the look in his eyes. It wasn't weakness. It was survival. And she realized that her game, her disguise, was nothing compared to the life he lived every day, where survival meant swallowing pride, hiding anger, and carrying wounds no one acknowledged. Still, fate wasn't done with them. The next week, she overheard the cafe's manager whispering to another employee, "I don't trust him around the cash. You know how they are." The words hit her like ice. They? Not a name, not a person, just a stereotype. She looked toward the waiter, who was wiping down tables, unaware of the suspicion hanging over his head. She wanted to scream, to shout, to tear off her disguise and expose not just her wealth, but the injustice eating at this place from the inside out. But she didn't. Not yet, because deep down, she sensed something bigger was coming. Something that would force the truth about him, about her, about the cruel divides that wealth and skin color could not hide. The storm had only begun to gather. The breaking point came on a night heavy with tension. The cafe was crowded, voices bouncing off the walls, the hum of conversation blending with the clatter of plates. She sat with her twins, blending in as always, but her eyes were fixed on the waiter. Something about him seemed restless, though his movements were steady as ever. It began quietly. Two men at the corner table, their laughter sharp, their words dripping with venom. At first, it was muttering, then louder. "You think you belong here? Serving people like us." The words cut through the noise, jagged and cruel. A hush fell across nearby tables, the kind of silence that wasn't neutral. It was complicit. The waiter froze for just a moment, shoulders tense. He had faced it before, but tonight their voices carried further, their mockery sharper. "Check his pockets," one of them jeered. "Bet he's already stolen from the till." The manager's head turned, and then, shockingly, he walked over, not to the men, but to the waiter. In front of everyone, he demanded, "Empty your pockets. Now." The air cracked. Her twins clutched her hands, their eyes wide. She could barely breathe as she watched the man who had served her meals with quiet dignity, reduced to a spectacle of suspicion. His face was calm, but his eyes burned with humiliation. He hesitated, torn between compliance and dignity. Around him, customers stared, some whispering, others recording with their phones. No one stood up. No one spoke. She wanted to rise, to scream that this was wrong, but her disguise held her back. To reveal herself meant exposing everything, the lie, the test, the secret life she had created. But to stay silent meant betraying him. The waiter slowly pulled out his pockets. Crumpled receipts, a pen, nothing more. His voice trembled, though he fought to steady it. "This is all I have." The manager frowned, unsatisfied. "Check the kitchen, too," the men taunted. "You people always find a way." That word, "you people," hung heavy in the air, poisonous and final. Something inside her snapped. She had come here to find true love, to test human nature. But in this moment, it wasn't about her experiment anymore. It was about truth. It was about justice. And it was about two children sitting beside her, watching how the world treated a man not for who he was, but for the color of his skin. She stood. Her voice rang across the cafe, trembling but fierce. "Enough." Heads turned. Conversation stopped. Every eye was on her now. She pulled her children close, her disguise slipping away with every word. You want to check pockets? Check mine. You want to accuse someone of lies? Look at yourselves. She reached into her bag and pulled out the one thing she had sworn to keep hidden, a platinum card, gleaming beneath the cafe lights. Gasps rippled through the room. The manager blinked, confused. The men at the corner sneered, then faltered. She met their eyes with fire. You think money decides honesty? You think skin decides worth? I could buy this cafe 10 times over. But what does that make me? Better? No. And it doesn't make him less. The waiter stood frozen, shock in his expression, shame still heavy in his eyes. But beneath it, something else flickered, gratitude, relief, the smallest spark of validation. For a moment, the cafe was silent. The weight of her revelation, the raw truth of her words, pressed on everyone like a storm about to break. And then, someone from the corner muttered, "She's lying. People like her always lie." The tension snapped like a wire. Gasps. A chair scraped. Her children clung to her arms. The waiter stepped forward, his voice low but resolute. "No, not this time." The air thickened, charged with sense that nothing would ever be the same after this night. The cafe never felt the same after that night. Some customers never returned, unwilling to face the uncomfortable truth they had witnessed. Others came back quietly, their eyes lowered, as if ashamed of their silence. And the manager, who once barked orders with careless cruelty, could no longer meet the waiter's gaze without the weight of guilt pressing on his shoulders. For the millionaire mother, the disguise she had so carefully built no longer mattered. Her secret wealth was exposed, but so was something far more powerful. The courage to stand up when others chose to sit in silence. She had not planned to reveal herself this way, but in the end, she realized it was never about testing others for love. It was about testing herself for truth. Her twins, still young but perceptive, carried that night in their hearts. They had seen their mother rise against injustice, not with money, but with her voice. They had seen a man judged not for his character, but for his skin, and they had seen what it meant to refuse silence, even when fear tried to hold them down. Those lessons would shape how they viewed the world, how they treated others, and how they demanded fairness in their own lives. And the waiter? For him, the scars of that humiliation would not disappear overnight. Years of discrimination cannot be undone with a single act of defiance. But that night marked a shift. For once, someone with privilege had used it to shine a light instead of turning away. He walked with his head a little higher, knowing he was seen, not just as a server, not as a stereotype, but as a man with dignity. The truth is, this story isn't just about a cafe, a millionaire in disguise, or a black waiter carrying plates heavier than anyone realized. It's about the systems that make such moments possible, the quiet prejudices that slip into daily life, and the dangerous silence of bystanders who let injustice pass unchecked. Racism doesn't always arrive with flashing sirens or open violence. Sometimes it whispers through suspicious eyes, biased assumptions, or a single careless phrase like "you people." It hides in jokes that aren't funny, in opportunities denied before they're even offered, in the subtle cuts that bleed dignity day after day. That mother entered the cafe hoping to discover love, but what she truly discovered was responsibility. The responsibility each of us carries when we witness injustice. To say nothing is to choose the side of the oppressor. To speak, even when our voice shakes, is to plant a seed of change. And maybe that's the lesson we all need to hear. Because his story, is not rare. It repeats in restaurants, schools, offices, and streets across the world. Too often, people look away, pretending it's not their battle. But it is. If we wait for someone else to stand, the silence will never break. So the question remains, the next time you see injustice, whether subtle or blatant, will you stay silent or will you rise? Because silence protects the oppressor. But courage can change everything.